Hi, welcome to the My Yoga podcast. My name is Marta.
And I'm Zoe.
Yay, and it's March now. We're like a week into March. It's Pisces season. Yay, I love Pisces season.
I do too.
Yeah, you know I love Pisces season.
Yeah, I mean, you are a Pisces, so.
I am a Pisces.
I just love Pisces season by association.
Yeah.
Like, I just know a lot of great Pisces people, so.
Yeah, plus Pisces means you get to feel all the things, you know, it's very watery little, they're not called elements, what's this called in?
Sign?
Sign. I'm not the one anyone should ever ask about astrology, unless it has to do directly with myself. Anyways, we're in March, it's Pisces season, and this month at the studio, we're talking about the idea of nourish or nourishment. Part of that is kind of inspired by Pisces season because fish live in the water and water is super nourishing, right? We all need water to survive. That's like the one thing, if you don't have food or anything, you can drink water for a pretty long time and just get by on that. So it is essential to our survival. So inspired by that, we're talking about the idea of nourishment. So what is it to nourish, or what is, nourishment?
Yeah, so by definition, nourish is to provide food or with other substances for growth or for health. So this can be anything like tangible and physical, so like literally the food we eat or the water we drink, but it can also be things that help nourish us mentally and emotionally, or even kind of spiritually or to our consciousness, things like that. So it has like a very wide range of things that it can do for us. One thing that we're talking about at the studio this month is sadhana. It's one of our themes. It's actually our theme for like the first week of the month. Mm-hmm. And sadhana is these kind of like rituals or spiritual practices that we have. And so that can provide a very tangible nourishment for us. So we can kind of think about it like our yoga practice. For a lot of people, that can be their sadhana. Or for me, I have like a regular journaling practice and self-reflection, which we've talked about a little bit deeper in the first episode that we did. So if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. But yeah, I have like a regular journaling practice that I do that just helps me, self-reflect and connect with myself deeper, and it definitely provides that like emotional and spiritual nourishment. Do you have any sadhana practices?
Yeah, and just to like backtrack a little bit too, like sadhana, like when we talk about it being kind of a tangible nourishment, it's like, I think the most tangible, as you mentioned, is food and water. Literally what we're eating and drinking. And then this is kind of like next level. It's like, what types of physical actions are we taking that help us feel really nourished in our body? And with sadhana being like a regular daily practice or ritual, it really serves that. For me, coming on my mat used to be very much my sadhana. I used to have a very consistent physical asana yoga practice for many, many years. And I find that as I've gotten older, my yoga looks a lot different. So I'm not necessarily coming to the mat and doing the poses every single day, but I have a much more tangible practice of daily breath and meditation. And so that is still my yoga practice, but that is something that helps me feel really grounded. It's a way that I start my day. It helps me kind of get in the right headspace for my day. And especially after like a strong breathing practice, I feel very oxygenated, very nourished in my body and in my spirit. So it's serving multiple levels. So that's just one of them. But I also, it's funny, I talked about this on a different podcast recently, but for many, many years, I've had this very basic morning routine that, like, I think from the outside just seems like, oh, that's just a thing you do when you wake up, but it's like become very sacred and very sadhana-like for me, where I'm the first person to wake up in my household. There's two of us, and it's me. Well, it's my cats, and then it's me.
The cats come first.
The cats come first. They always wake up first. But I wake up, and when I get out of bed, the first thing I do is an oil pool or oil swishing.
Oh, okay.
And then that usually takes about 10 minutes. And because an oil swishing, for those of you who don't know, you've got oil in your mouth, you're kind of swirling it around, you can't talk. So it like forces me to be in this space of kind of silence and, you know, reflection. And then after that, while I'm doing that, I heat up hot water and I drink my hot salt water every morning. And that has become very ritual. Like the thought of not doing it on any given day feels like weird. I even do it on vacation. And that's become this very like stable part of my life, that every day I do this and it sets me in the right tone, it sets me up for success for my day, and it feels very nourishing in that way when I wake up.
It's funny, I was gonna ask you if you do it while you're traveling also.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah,
really
my friends
awesome.
know. They're like, Marta's gonna be up doing some weird stuff with oil in her mouth and like drinking water and then meditating afterwards.
But they just know.
They know. It's like we're on vacation and I'm still gonna like spend 30 minutes in the morning doing that every day. So that is definitely my sadhana.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think sadhana could also look like if it's a self-care practice for someone to go to their favorite coffee shop and get their favorite drink and like a treat? Like if that's like a once a week thing that they do?
Possibly. So when we really look at sadhana, it means any daily practice or ritual that contributes to your overall well-being. So I think when you break it down, if someone's kind of looking at their routines, and maybe their routine is to do just that, and you think about, well, what is this serving for me? Is it creating a grounding practice? Do I know the same faces in the coffee shop every day? So it's this really nice interaction that I get to have with people. Is it just a little pick-me-up that I need in the week? Like if it's serving you in all of those ways and it's contributing to your overall being rather than taking away from, then absolutely it can be. It can be this very sacred part of your life as long as it's done very intentionally. It's kind of another part of sadhana, is having that intention behind it. And especially if it's like a mental break in the day, I think that's a really good example of that. I think what can happen is sometimes we have these rituals and routines, and it's when do they move from being sadhana to maybe not being useful or contributing to our overall well-being anymore, and that's okay. Sometimes things are really good for us at one point in time and then they're not anymore. So it's just noticing, like, is this habit no longer serving what it was anymore? Maybe I replace it with something else, maybe I adjust it. So, you know, the short answer is yes, if.
Right.
Yeah, all of those things are true for that individual.
But that intention piece is like the important part of the equation. Like what is your intention behind it? And if that helps your overall well-being, then it can be sadhana. And so it can look like a bunch of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. I was using the example in my classes when we were talking about sadhana of like, brushing your teeth could be an act of sadhana. If you're brushing your teeth with great intention, you're being like very conscious of how you're doing it. You know, if you're thinking about it like a yoga asana practice, like you're experiencing the sensations in your mouth and the feelings on your teeth and noticing what's different from the last time you brushed your, like that could be a very intentional moment for you to kind of become closer with yourself, and could be like an act of sadhana, but it's just that intentionality behind it and if it's serving your overall well-being rather than taking away from. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So sadhana, that was kind of like base level. Like a lot of our themes this month are kind of building upon each other. And then after sadhana, we're focusing on Chandra, which Chandra is?
The moon.
The moon, yeah, we love the moon. She's so pretty. And actually this week is a full moon week, right?
It is.
When is it? You probably know.
You'd think that I would know.
It's like,
I actually don't.
It's
this
like
time,
in 2
but
days or something.
Yeah,
I think.
but it is this week. We're definitely like in that energy though, because the full moon energy can exist for several days.
Yes.
So we're in that frame.
Tell me a little bit about like the qualities of the moon.
So the moon has definitely like a feminine quality to it. And when we think about feminine energy, it's not necessarily like male or female. The feminine energy kind of represents these like softer or more nurturing qualities that we might have. Right.
And so that's one reason we're talking about Chandra this month, right? Is The moon is very nurturing, she's very watery, and she's connected a lot to our emotionships and our relationships and self-care. So we're using Chandra or the moon more as this idea of inspiration right now when we see her as representing this nurturing quality, especially if we think about nurturing ourselves and nurturing ourselves through relationships. It's how can we bring that sense of nourishment into our life with the relationships that we hold. I feel very lucky that I have like a really tight knit group of girlfriends, and that is incredibly nourishing to my soul. You know, I feel very fortunate in that there's 7 of us who are all very, very close, and we're very intentional about keeping in touch every day. We talk about what's happening in each other's lives. We don't let that go, and even if we don't physically see each other every single week, we're at least having communication, and we make sure that that is, you know, it's deep. We're talking about the things we're experiencing, the things that are happening in our life, the good and the bad, and nourishing those relationships helps me feel better as an individual because, one, it can feel really good to show up for other people. Like that in turn can be nourishing for you, but it's also important. Like we're communal creatures. We're meant to interact with other people, and it's so important to engage with other individuals. And I know you do a lot of fun stuff with your friends as well.
Yeah, I have like a similar experience. There's 5 of us in total, including me. And yeah, we have a group chat also that we're always talking in, and we're always sharing our life experiences and what we're going through, and we try to hang out regularly also. So yeah, that support means everything. And really, like, I mean, one could argue that's kind of one of the most important parts of life is nurturing the connections that we have, especially the intimate connections, because those can be really special.
Yeah, and I think that nurturing your relationships becomes a form of nurturing your own self-care as well. I do think what's really important about that is the idea of nurturing your relationships. It's really easy to have relationships and let them become one-sided and think, well, this person isn't reaching out to me or isn't doing this or that. But when we think about that quality of nurturing and that watery quality of the moon, you know, water is ever flowing, it's very cyclical, the moon is very cyclical, so there should always be a give and a take. It's as much as you give to me, I should be giving back, so that it's not just a one-sided situation. And I think that's what makes that, you know, that's where that inspiration of nurture really comes in from the moon. Plus, she's bright.
She's so bright.
She's bright, and good friends will illuminate the things that are really good about you, and they won't focus on the dark things. You know?
I liked that.
We use the full moon to illuminate things in our life a lot of times, and if friends who are really, really good, they don't let you see the dark stuff. They illuminate the bright stuff in your life, and this is also something that's really important for me.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So following, you know, we're starting to get a little more emotional with some of the themes. After Chandra, we're going to be focusing on Svadhisthana this month. What is Svadhisthana?
Yeah, so it can also be known as our sacral chakra. So it's the second chakra, and if you've never heard of chakra before, it's this energy system that we have in our body. So we mainly work with 7 chakras. They can kind of be thought of as like these wheels of light in our body, and they all represent something different, all possess different qualities. So Svadhisthana, the sacral chakra, it is located like in that sacral region, kind of in that lower abdominal area, and it's represented by the color orange, and it's all about like our personal identity and our creativity. It can also be kind of our emotions also. So a way to kind of tap into nourishing that Svadhisthana chakra is anything that helps us tap into our creative nature. So something I actually did recently is, so I used to dance. I danced for a really long time, which you know, and I decided that I wanted to auditioned to be in a show with this company this summer, and I had no idea how it was gonna go. I haven't like formally danced in like 5 years, but I really wanted to do it, and so I decided to just put myself out there, and it went great, and now I'm gonna be in the show. So
That's awesome.
it's happening this summer, but being part of this group and getting to dance is helping me tap into that creative energy. And now I'm doing it for fun. So it's just for me. It's just to feel good. And I needed that because I used to do it in a much more like pre-professional setting, and so now I've moved away from that. And yeah, so anything that helps us like tap into that creativity. And I know you kind of do some creative endeavors for fun also.
I do a lot of them. I'll try to pick one that's different than yours. So I love to garden, and it's on my mind because like spring is right around the corner, of course. So I'm just thinking about my garden right now a lot. I am like dying to get outside and get my hands in the dirt. And I think sometimes we hear the word creativity and everyone thinks that has to be like painting or dancing or, you know, writing or something like that. And it can be, but also, especially when we consider Svadhisthana, it's a place of creative potential. Because it's a pretty sexy place too. That's where all of our sexual and reproductive organs are located in that area. So that's part of the reason it's tied to this idea of creation and creativity and the potential to create. And working in my garden, not only do I get to be artistic when I think about how I want to lay out my plants or things in the garden, there is that element of artistic, imaginative creativity. But there's also like, I actually get to help grow things and create things with my hands, which is so satisfying, and it's become such a part of my identity. I think that's the key thing in Svadhisthana too, is it's participating in these activities that help us feel creative and tap into our sense of self. I feel very connected to myself when I'm outside and I'm in nature and I'm working with the dirt. Like that is one of the times I feel most at home in my body. And I imagine dance does that for you also.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point though, that, you know, creativity like doesn't have to be just like what we think of when we think of art. Like creativity is much more than that. Creation energy is much more than that. So I'm really glad that you tied it into that. Yeah, dance is definitely the main way that I do that, but I definitely have other things that I explore as well that help me tap into that, like cooking.
I was gonna say, you love to cook.
I do love to cook.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that similar energy. I mean, you're making something from nothing, or you just have all of these ingredients laid out, and then it becomes like a work of art. You're putting it together, and then that's something that's physically nourishing your body.
You're getting two things done at one time. I know.
It's amazing.
We love Svadhisthana. It's a great chakra, and I think exploring the different ways that you can feel creative in your life, it really does help you hone in on your sense of self and a little bit of your personal desires and feelings. And that's really what Svadhisthana is all about, is finding that space. Cool. So then we have just one more theme for the month that we'll be focusing on after all of these. And as I said, they kind of layer upon each other. So they all get a little more kind of airy or hard to understand as they go along. So the last one is ether, the element ether. And this comes from Ayurveda, which is the sister science to yoga, and ether is an element that is like so hard to describe because it's just space. It's just emptiness, essentially. And ether, because it's just space, there's a lot of potential and possibility within ether. And you can think about ether as like an empty bowl or basin, and we're just waiting to fill it up with all of the other elements. So in Ayurveda, there's ether, there's vata, which is like air, the air around us. There's kapha, which is more watery and kind of earthy. And there's pitta as well, which is fiery. So we all contain all of these elements is the theory in Ayurveda. And ether just becomes this container that we can kind of take the qualities of these other elements and start to add them together into kind of our own personal soup, if you will, because we all have like different elements of all of those things.
Personal soup. I love that.
So now you're probably like, well, what does that even have to do with nourishing anything? When we think about ether, it is our potential. So we are infinitely potential, as we talk about a lot in yoga. Our capacity is beyond our own knowing, which I think is a really beautiful concept to think, I can do anything, really. It's just a matter of, do I want to? Does it align with me? Do I have the intention to do it? So ether is about tapping into that capacity. I think a good way to bring that down to earth a little bit is to think about intention setting or goal setting. It's actually kind of well timed with the full moon this week. But ether can be just the act of thinking about what we want to achieve and making plans towards that, making intentions towards that. So it's a new month. Maybe there's something that we want to work on. There's a goal that we have. That's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about ether this month, is what is our potential and how do we want to lay the groundwork to build up to that potential.
And it's also a great time for that. It's just, we're entering this new season where everything is just blooming again. Spring is very much like a time for new beginnings. We can look at the new year as like that, but it is it's like the astrological new year as we come into the spring equinox. Is that next week?
It's the 21st.
20.
That might be next week. We're real
Yeah.
close. We're real close to the equinox. Yeah.
So it's a great time
It is.
to explore that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because that's also like a big factor into a lot of our themes right now, is everything's kind of, spring is blooming, it's creating. The world around us is nurturing itself to blossom, to regrow, and there's so much potential in all of that. It's like you go outside and you look at all the buds and all the branches. They're just like,
I love it.
they're sitting at the cusp of, potential. They're like, I'm gonna become a leaf or a flower or whatever it is, and that's kind of where we're seeing ourselves. It's like, what am I gonna become? Like, what are you budding into?
I just love that, because I was literally looking yesterday at one of our trees in our yard and how it was starting to like bud a little bit, and I had a similar thought. So that's amazing.
Thank you. Well, we're just on the same brainwave,
Yeah.
Well, let's cap it all off and do a quick little recap of all of that. So it's March at the studio. We're talking about nourishment. We already talked about sadhana. Yeah, which of course we know is our
It's like our tangible nourishment.
yes, our daily practice,
Yeah.
our daily sacred practice. And then this week we're talking about Chandra, the moon, which is more like relationships and nurturing other individuals so that we can in turn feel nurtured. And then we'll be talking about
Svadhisthana.
yes, our space for
Our creativity and personal identity.
nurturing that space of self. And then finally we'll top it off with ether and nurturing our potential and seeing ourselves as those tiny little buds on the branch.
And it'll be spring by that time.
It will be spring by that time. We'll be bursting and ready to bloom. So
Yay.
yay. Well, I think that covers everything for this month. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Yay.
Bye.
I'm gonna leave that on
You're
there.
gonna see